Have you ever sat in your car while a cop leaned into your window and felt your brain just go completely blank? That blank moment is not an accident. It is a psychological tactic. And in those few seconds of confusion, most people hand over every single right they have without a cop ever forcing them to do anything. Hit subscribe right now, because what I'm about to show you could be the difference between driving home free tonight or watching your car get torn apart on the side of the road. Cops train for months learning exactly how to flip that panic switch in your brain, and I am about to show you every single trick they use and exactly how to shut each one down. Here is what you're about to learn. 6 specific psychological tactics trained officers use during traffic stops to get you to voluntarily give up your constitutional rights. The exact words you say to counter each one, the Supreme Court cases that make your responses 100% legal, and the real scenario breakdown showing you how a smart driver handles a stop from the first second to the last. I have analyzed over 200 body cam videos to build this list, and what I found will genuinely shock you. These tricks work not because cops are bad people. They work because your brain is wired to fall for them every single time unless you know what to look for. Here's the reality. Most people think their rights protect them automatically. They think the Constitution just kicks in and saves them. It does not work that way. Your rights only protect you when you actually use them, and cops are not legally required to remind you that you have them. In fact, the training manuals used in police academies across the country teach officers how to get you talking, get you complying, and get you consenting before you even realize what is happening. Most people have no idea that the moment they answer certain questions or agree to certain requests, they have already lost the legal battle. Courts have repeatedly ruled that if you consent to something voluntarily, even under pressure, even while feeling scared, the consent is valid. The search becomes legal. The evidence found becomes admissible, and your lawyer can do almost nothing about it. That is why what you are about to learn is so important. This is not about being difficult with police. This is about knowing the exact line between being cooperative and accidentally destroying your own legal protections. Let me show you exactly how the first trick works. Cops call it the friendly approach, and it is the most powerful one on this entire list. When an officer walks up to your window, they almost never start with something aggressive. They start warm, they smile. They say something like, "Hey, how are you doing today? Do you know why I pulled you over?" That question right there is a trap. Think about what it is actually asking you to do. It is asking you to guess at your own guilt and say it out loud to a law enforcement officer who is recording everything you say. The bad way. Most drivers respond with something like, "I think I might have been going a little fast back there." Congratulations. You just gave the officer probable cause, a confession, and a reason to keep digging all in one sentence. Good way. Smart drivers say this. "I'm not sure, officer." That is it. 4 words. You're not lying. You're not being rude. You're simply not incriminating yourself. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court. The answer to that question is legally irrelevant to the stop itself, and you have zero obligation to guess at your own guilt. The Fifth Amendment protects you from being a witness against yourself, and that protection starts before you are ever under arrest. It starts the moment a cop asks you a question that could lead to self-incrimination. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. Officers are trained that if you answer the first question casually and comfortably, you will answer the next one the same way, and the next one, and the one after that. Each small answer builds psychological momentum toward full cooperation. By getting you to admit you might have been speeding, they have already started moving you down a path that ends with you consenting to things you never planned to consent to. Knowing this trick exists is half the battle. The moment an officer asks you a question, pause. Ask yourself, could my answer to this hurt me? If there's any chance it could, your answer is, "I'm not sure, officer." Have you ever been asked that question during a traffic stop? Drop a comment below and tell me what you said, because I guarantee most of you said something you did not have to say. The second trick is called the assumption of authority, and it is even more subtle than the first one. This is where an officer does not ask you to do something. They just tell you to do it like it is already decided. They walk up and say, "Go ahead and step out of the vehicle for me," or "Pop the trunk real quick," or "Hand me your phone so I can see your insurance." Notice something. None of those are questions. They are commands delivered in a casual tone, and your brain hears a command from someone in uniform and immediately moves to comply. This is 100% legal for you to push back on, and here is exactly what you say. You look at the officer calmly and say this, "Officer, am I legally required to do that?" 7 words. That is your entire response. You're not refusing yet. You're asking a legal clarification question. And here's what happens next. If the answer is yes, and there is a legal requirement, the officer will tell you why. If the answer is no, which it often is, suddenly that command starts to fall apart. Officers can legally order you out of a vehicle during a traffic stop under the Pennsylvania v. Mims ruling from 1977. That case basically said officers can ask you to exit for safety reasons. Plain English, cops can tell you to get out of the car. But that is where the legal authority to command you largely ends during a routine traffic stop. They cannot legally command you to open your trunk. They cannot legally command you to hand over your phone. They cannot legally command you to let them search your back seat. And if you comply with any of those commands because you thought you had to, that compliance is treated as voluntary consent. I have analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and this pattern shows up constantly. Officer delivers a command in a calm voice. Driver complies immediately. Officer searches the vehicle. Evidence is found. And in court, the driver's lawyer argues they were coerced. The judge looks at the footage and says the driver appeared to comply voluntarily. Case closed. The smart move is always to ask if you are legally required before you comply with anything beyond showing your license, registration, and insurance. Are you starting to see how many rights you have been giving away? Keep watching because it gets crazier from here. Tactic number 3 is called manufactured urgency, and this one works because it attacks your patience. The way it works is the officer takes your license and goes back to the patrol car. They run your plates, check your license, write up the ticket. All of that might take 5 or 10 minutes. And then they come back, hand you your documents, and say, "You are free to go. Actually, before you go, do you mind if I ask you a few questions?" Here's the critical part. The moment they hand back your license and tell you that you are free to go, the traffic stop is legally over. You are no longer being detained. You are now a free citizen who can simply drive away. But the officer does not want you to think about that. They want you to feel like you are still in the middle of something official. They use phrases like, "This will only take a second," or "I just have one quick thing," to make leaving feel rude or suspicious. Watch what happens when drivers fall for this. They stay. They answer questions for another 5 minutes. They get asked about where they are going, where they came from, whether they have anything in the car. And sometimes they end up consenting to a search right there on the spot, all after the legal reason for the stop already ended. Here's exactly what you say when they hand your documents back. "Thank you, officer. Am I free to go?" If they say yes, you say, "Have a good night," and you drive away. You do not answer follow-up questions. You do not explain where you are going. This is 100% legal. The Supreme Court addressed this directly in Illinois v. Cabal. Once the purpose of the stop is complete, extending it requires either your consent or new reasonable suspicion. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection during the tail end of a stop, because most people do not even know the stop has a legal ending point. Listen closely because this is critical. Most people think being polite means answering every question. It does not. You can be completely polite, smile, thank the officer, and still decline to answer questions and decline to consent to searches. Politeness and compliance are two completely different things. You want to be one, you never have to be the other. Most people already clicked away. If you are still here, you are in the top 10% of people who will actually remember this when it matters. Drop a comment right now that says "still here" so I know who my real ones are. This next section is where it gets really important. Tactic number 4 is called the good cop softening technique, and it sounds almost kind when officers use it. This is when an officer says something like, "Look, I'm not trying to get you in trouble. If you have nothing to hide, this will be over in 2 minutes. You just let me take a quick look and we are done." That line is designed to do 3 things at once. First, it frames you as suspicious if you say no. Second, it creates a social pressure that says cooperating is the easy, reasonable choice. Third, it makes a search sound tiny and harmless. Bad way. Most drivers hear that and think, "Well, I do not have anything, so why not just let them look?" And they say yes. Good way. Smart drivers say this exact sentence. "Officer, I do not consent to searches." 6 words. Not aggressive, not rude, just clear. Here is the reality. Having nothing to hide has nothing to do with it legally. Officers have found drugs planted by previous passengers. Officers have found legal items that got misidentified. Officers have found things people forgot were in the car. The moment you consent to a search, you give up all legal argument about what gets found and how it gets found. Former police officers have confirmed this works. When a driver clearly and calmly states they do not consent, officers know they need a warrant or probable cause to proceed, and many stops end right there. His comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. The Fourth Amendment protects you against unreasonable searches, but that protection disappears the second you consent. Never consent. Ever. Even if you are 100% certain you have nothing in that car. Tactic number 5 is the false consequence warning. This one is used to scare you into compliance by making you think refusing will make things worse. The officer says something like, "If you make me get a warrant, I'm going to call the dogs out here, we're going to be here for hours, and you're going to miss whatever you had planned tonight." Or they say, "You're making this harder on yourself by not cooperating." Watch what happens when you hear this. Your brain calculates the cost of waiting versus the cost of consenting, and it picks the path of least immediate pain. You consent because you want to go home. But here is what that threat actually means legally. If an officer can get a warrant, they were going to get one anyway. If they cannot get a warrant, that threat was completely empty. And dog sniffs of the exterior of a vehicle, while sometimes legally permitted, require the stop not to be unlawfully extended just to wait for the dog. The Rodriguez v. United States ruling in 2015 said extending a stop beyond its original purpose to wait for a drug dog is a Fourth Amendment violation without reasonable suspicion. Plain English, they cannot legally hold you for an hour waiting on dogs just because you said no to a search. Here is exactly what you say when you hear a false consequence warning. You say, "I understand, officer. I do not consent to searches, and I am happy to wait if you are getting a warrant." Calm, polite, unshakable. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection against pressure tactics because it shows you know your rights without showing hostility. Tactic number 6 is what I call the paperwork trap, and it is the sneakiest one on this list. This is where an officer asks you to sign something, usually the ticket itself, and while you're focused on the paperwork, they ask a casual question. "So, where are you headed tonight?" Or, "Is this your car?" Or anyone else been driving this vehicle recently? You are distracted. Your guard is down. You are signing a document and your brain is on autopilot. You answer the question without even thinking about it. And sometimes that one offhand answer gives the officer the thread they need to pull. Smart drivers sign what they are legally required to sign, which is just acknowledging receipt of the ticket, not admitting guilt. And when a question comes during paperwork, they pause, look up, and say, "I prefer not to answer questions, officer." I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos. This exact moment, the paperwork distraction combined with a casual question shows up in a significant number of stops that turn into extended investigations. Knowing it exists is enough to protect yourself. Now let me show you how all 6 of these work together in a real traffic stop scenario so you can see the full picture. You're driving home at night, blue lights come on behind you, you pull over safely. The officer approaches. He smiles and says, "Hey, how are you doing tonight? Do you know why I pulled you over?" Tactic 1, the friendly approach. Bad way. You say, "I think I might have been going a little fast back there. Sorry about that." Good way. You say, "I'm not sure, officer." You hand over your license, registration, and insurance without being asked. The officer goes back to run your plates. He comes back 10 minutes later, hands you your documents, and says, "All right, you are free to go. Actually, before you head out, do you mind stepping out of the vehicle for a second?" Tactic 2, assumption of authority. Good way. You say calmly, "Officer, am I legally required to step out?" If he says yes due to a safety reason, you comply. If he says no, you stay in the car. Then he tries the good cop line. "Look, I just want to take a quick look. Nothing to hide, nothing to worry about." Tactic 4, good way. "Officer, I do not consent to searches." Then he tries the false consequence warning. "I will call the dogs out here if you make me." Tactic 5, good way. "I understand. I do not consent to searches, and I am happy to wait if you are getting a warrant." The officer pauses. He has no warrant. He has no probable cause. He has no legal ground to extend this stop. He says, "Fine, have a good night." You say, "Thank you, officer. Have a good night." You drive home. That is exactly how this plays out when you know what you're doing. Next week, I'm dropping the video on what to do when a cop claims they smell marijuana coming from your vehicle. Subscribe right now because that video could literally save you from an arrest that ruins your record, your job, and your life. It drops in 3 days, and it is the most requested topic I have ever covered. Quick recap of everything you just learned. The friendly question is a trap designed to get you to confess before you realize it. The exact response is, "I am not sure, officer." Commands delivered without legal authority are not actually commands. Ask if you are legally required before you comply. Once your documents are returned, the stop is legally over, and you can leave. You never have to consent to a search, and saying you do not consent is 100% legal no matter what pressure you feel. And manufactured urgency and false consequence warnings are psychological tricks with no real legal teeth behind them. You now know more about your rights during a traffic stop than 90% of drivers on the road. That knowledge only protects you if you remember it and stay calm enough to use it. Hit subscribe so you do not miss that marijuana stop video dropping in 3 days. Smash that like button if this just changed the way you think about traffic stops forever. And drop a comment telling me which one of these 6 tactics you have personally experienced without even knowing what it was. Stay safe out there.